Did you know that some of the most ordinary-looking U.S. coins in your change jar could be worth up to $70,000? We're diving deep into the top 3 rare coins that have shocked collectors and auction houses. The 1966 Washington quarter, the mysterious 1,000-piece Sacagawea dollar, and the historic 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar. Each of these coins hides rare errors and minting secrets that could turn pocket change. Some of those coins, specifically the 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar, could be worth not just $1, but hundreds, thousands, and even up to $1 million depending on the rarity and errors. Yes, one of the most controversial coins in U.S. history hides a few extremely valuable secrets, and you might just have one sitting in your drawer right now. So don't blink, because in the next few minutes, you'll discover how one of the most underestimated modern U.S. coins became a collector's dream when the U.S. Mint introduced the Susan B. Anthony dollar in 1979. It was meant to replace the heavy Eisenhower dollar and make dollar coins more practical for everyday use. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real, historical woman, Susan B. Anthony, a pioneer for women's rights and a key figure in the movement for women's suffrage. The design, created by Frank Gasparo, featured Anthony's portrait on the obverse and the Apollo 11 moon landing design with an eagle landing on the moon on the reverse, a continuation from the Eisenhower dollar series. One of the most famous of these is the 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar struck on a wrong planchet. A planchet is the blank metal disc used to make a coin, and during the rush of minting, a few plankets meant for other denominations accidentally got mixed in. For example, some 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollars were struck on quarter plankets, making them smaller and lighter than normal. The result is a coin that's slightly undersized, missing parts of the design along the rim, and weighing around 5.67 grams instead of the usual 8.1 grams. These are extremely rare and can sell for $5,000 to $15,000, depending on the quality and how much of the design remains visible. But it gets even more fascinating. There are also reports of 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollars struck on silver plankets. Now, officially, silver was no longer used in U.S. circulation coins after 1976, but leftover silver blanks occasionally got mixed into later runs. If you find a 1979 dollar that looks slightly different, brighter, heavier, and with a distinctive silver ring, when tapped, it could be one of these transitional silver errors. Because they're so rare and unexpected, a confirmed 1979 struck on a silver planchet could easily bring in $10,000 to $20,000, or even more if authenticated by PCGS or NGC. Another incredible rarity is the 1979 double die obverse. This error happens when the die that stamps the design onto the coin strikes twice slightly off alignment, creating a doubled image. On these coins, you can often see doubling on the inscriptions or the date itself. Some examples even show a slight doubling on Susan B. Anthony's features. These doubled dies are highly sought after by collectors. Depending on the strength and clarity of the doubling, these coins can sell anywhere from $500 to $5,000 or more in top condition. And that's not all. There are also off-center strike errors, where the coin's design is visibly misaligned. These coins often have a blank crescent on one side and a shifted design on the other. The more dramatic the off-center strike, the higher the value. A 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar that's 50% off-center and still shows a visible date can easily bring in $1,000 to $4,000. Then there's the broad strike error, where the coin is struck outside of its collar, causing the metal to spread out and create a wider, flatter appearance. These coins look unusual, almost like they've been stretched, and collectors love them for their visual appeal. A 1979 broad strike dollar can sell for $500 to $1,500, depending on condition. And for collectors obsessed with perfection, condition is everything. The difference between a lightly circulated coin and a pristine, untouched example can mean thousands of dollars. The rarest of all 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollars are those graded MS68 or higher by professional services like PCGS or NGC. Because most of these coins were handled roughly or stored in bulk, finding one with flawless surfaces and sharp strikes is almost impossible. One high-grade specimen recently sold for over $15,000, and experts predict that if a perfect MS69 example ever appears, it could be worth $50,000 or more. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating coins ever struck by the U.S. Mint, the 1966 Washington quarter dollar. At first glance, it looks like any other coin you'd use to buy a cup of coffee or pay for parking, but hidden among the millions minted that year are a few ultra-rare examples worth staggering amounts of money. Yes, you heard that right. Some 1966 quarters have sold for hundreds, thousands, and even over $1 million at auction. So before you spend that old coin sitting in your change jar, watch until the end, because you might be sitting on a small fortune without even knowing it. The year 1966 was a turning point for American coinage. The country was still adjusting after the Coinage Act of 1965, which eliminated silver from circulating dimes and quarters. Up until 1964, quarters were made of 90% silver, but due to a nationwide silver shortage and the rising cost of metal, the mint switched to a copper-nickel-clad composition, a layer of copper sandwich it between two layers of nickel. That change alone made 1965 and 1966 quarters historically significant, as they marked the first years of a brand new era in American money. One of the most remarkable 1966 quarters ever discovered is the 1966 quarter struck on a silver planchet. Remember, quarters after 1964 were no longer supposed to contain silver. However, a few leftover silver blanks from the previous year accidentally found their way into the presses in 1966. These transitional era coins look slightly different. Shinier, heavier, and with a distinct ring when dropped on a hard surface. Their weight comes in around 6.25 grams instead of the standard 5.67 grams of the copper-nickel quarters. When collectors identify these, they know they've struck gold, or rather, silver. One such 1966 silver planchet error sold for more than $10,000 at auction, and experts believe even higher prices could be achieved depending on the coin's condition. Another mind-blowing rarity is the 1966 quarter struck on a 10-cent planchet. Imagine this, a quarter-sized die accidentally stamping its design onto a dime-sized blank. The result? A smaller, thinner coin that shows part of the Washington quarter design, crammed into the smaller circle. These odd-looking errors are highly sought after by collectors because they visually display the chaos of the mint's production lines. Depending on how much of the design remains visible and the condition of the coin, these can sell for anywhere between $5,000 and $15,000, sometimes even more in top condition. Then there's the 1966 double die obverse quarter, where the doubling effect occurs on Washington's profile, the motto, or the date itself. This happens when the die strikes the coin twice slightly out of alignment, creating a visible doubling effect. It's a minting mistake that makes collectors' hearts race. Even a minor double die example can fetch hundreds, but a strong, bold double die from 1966 can command $1,000 to $5,000 or more, depending on sharpness and grade, but the surprises don't stop there. Some 1966 quarters were struck with off-center errors, meaning the design was not properly aligned when stamped. These off-center strikes show part of the design missing, replaced by a blank crescent of metal. The more dramatic the misalignment, the higher the value. A perfectly centered coin might be worth its face value, but an off-center strike that's 50% misaligned with visible dates and design details can easily sell for $1,500 to $3,000. Collectors love these because they're not just valuable, they're visually striking and tell a story of mechanical imperfection. Perhaps the most valuable 1966 quarter ever discovered was one graded MS68 by PCGS, meaning it was in near-perfect condition with its original mint luster fully intact. High-grade coins from the mid-1960s are incredibly rare because most were heavily circulated. Finding one in pristine, untouched condition is almost impossible. That's why collectors go wild for these top-tier examples. One such MS68 specimen sold for over $25,000, and experts predict if a flawless MS69 ever surfaces, it could be worth over $100,000 or more. What if I told you that one of those coins, the 2000p Sacagawea Dollar, has hidden treasures among its ranks that are worth not just hundreds, not just thousands, but in some cases even millions of dollars? That's right, some have made headlines by selling for life-changing sums of money, all because of small, fascinating minting mistakes that most people never even notice. So stay tuned, because what looks like a simple dollar coin could be your golden ticket to a fortune. The story of the 2000p Sacagawea Dollar begins at a time when the U.S. Mint was eager to bring something new and symbolic to the American people. After the disappointing reception of the Susan B. Anthony dollar in 1979, which was often mistaken for a quarter, the Mint wanted a coin that was both visually distinct and historically meaningful. In 2000, they introduced a brand new series, the Sacagawea Dollar, featuring the young Shoshone woman Sacagawea, who famously guided Lewis and Clark on their expedition across the American frontier. Designed by Glenna Goodacre, the obverse of the coin depicts Sacagawea carrying her infant son, Jean-Baptiste, while the reverse, designed by Thomas D. Rogers Sr., showcases a soaring eagle symbolizing peace and freedom. When the first one surfaced, collectors couldn't believe their eyes. It looked like a fantasy coin, a mix between two completely different denominations. But after authentication by experts, it became clear this was no hoax. The U.S. Mint itself confirmed it was a genuine error, and that's when the value skyrocketed. The first discovered specimen sold for nearly $30,000, and as collectors began realizing just how rare these were, later examples reached astronomical prices. In one famous case, a 2,000-piece Sacagawea Dollar mule error sold for $144,000, and another pristine example fetched an incredible $200,000 at auction. Today, experts believe that if a new, flawless specimen were to appear, especially one graded MS68 or higher, it could easily sell for over $1 million. But the mule error isn't the only treasure hiding in the 2,000-piece Sacagawea series. There are several other fascinating minting mistakes that command serious value. One of the most notable is the 2,000-piece Sacagawea Dollar with missing edge lettering. This error occurred when the coin failed to receive its edge inscriptions during the minting process. These coins appear smooth along the rim instead of having the fine reading or edge markings typical of U.S. dollars. While not as dramatic as the mule error, this mistake still makes a huge difference in value. Depending on condition, they can bring anywhere from $500 to $2,500 in the collector market. Another exciting find is the 2,000-piece Sacagawea Dollar struck on a wrong planchet, such as a quarter, nickel, or even a foreign coin blank. During high-volume production, stray plankets from other denominations occasionally slipped into the presses. The result was a coin with the Sacagawea design, but on metal that was never intended for it. Some of these wrong planchet errors have sold for $5,000 to $15,000, depending on which metal and denomination were used. Collectors also prize the off-center strike errors, where the design was stamped incorrectly on the planchet. Some of these show Sacagawea's portrait partially missing, replaced by a blank crescent of golden metal. These off-center strikes are dramatic and visually striking, often selling for $1,000 to $3,000, with more extreme examples fetching even more. Meanwhile, the regular 2,000-piece Sacagawea dollars also have their place in collecting history. Though millions were minted, finding one in perfect mint state condition, especially those graded MS68 or higher, is extremely difficult. Coins with flawless luster, full strike detail, and zero contact marks are worth far more than face value. Some high-grade specimens have sold for $2,000 to $5,000, proving that even without major errors, condition alone can make a huge difference in value.